between our habits, our attitudes, and our convictions, there will be stress. And this stress is liable to endanger our mental and emotional poise. Just as surely as it is difficult for us to live with unpleasant situations around us in family or in business, so it is difficult for the internal person to live in a situation in which parts of its nature are torn in one direction and parts in another. When the psychic field is required to have two allegiances, and these allegiances are not compatible, then there is trouble. So it is quite possible that the person who tries to unfold too rapidly the higher vibratory rates of his nature will get into trouble, because these higher vibrations will come into violent conflict with other vibrations that are not so high and not so redeemed in their quality. The person may therefore come not to enlightenment but to sickness. He will find that the vibratory energies that he is developing are too much for his mental focal point. His mind is on one level of energy. He is trying to spiritualize it, and this spiritualizing force is like sending too much current over a wire. It will burn out the circuit. He may find that his emotional ideals are very lofty, but his emotional practices are rather earthy. And here again, the conflict means that the body, the psychic organism as we know it, is not able to sustain the exceptional energies that are cast upon it by some resolution of the will. It is therefore, as Buddha points out, very important that the individual, first of all, clears the mental, emotional, vibratory field. That before he attempts to put high vibrations into this area, that the vibrations which would be in conflict with it must be cleared by the person himself. He must, therefore, have a house cleaning before he dedicates his life to some nobler pursuit. He cannot try to grow spiritually and nurse all his old faults and failings. He cannot keep on hating and at the same time develop a powerful, constructive regard for deity. He cannot have a deep mystical experience while jealousies and self-centeredness constantly build up negative areas within his own consciousness. If he tries to fight the thing out inside of himself, he breaks the basic rules of Zen and Taoism. He breaks the whole concept of discipline as it was set up by the ancient initiate teachers. Well, the purpose of discipline is always purification. The individual in the Platonic and Neoplatonic concepts must first attain a certain catharsis. He must dispose of that which is unworthy in himself. If he does not, he will create a situation of combustion in which he will neither be the same person he was before, with the reasonable adjustment that made life endurable, if not truly enriched and purposeful, nor will he be able to suddenly rise to some great heights of achievement without regard for the fact that the negative vibratory pressures of his attitudes are holding him down. He cannot pull apart. He cannot separate himself. And if he tries to force such a separation, then he is very apt to develop a multiple personality problem and become a psychotic. So that the study of these energy fields and their resources and their contributions to the total picture, this study is at least theoretically highly rewarding. It has to do with many values that are important to us. The ancients referred to the magic mirror, and the medieval transcendentalists, those of the early modern French school, spoke of the mystery of the astral light. And this is the same thought that we find in the opera of Parsifal, where Klingsor's magic garden is the symbol of a strange world of fantasy and illusion, a world filled with beautiful flowers, around the stem of every flower coiled a deadly serpent. This mysterious world of the astral light has also come down to us in psychology. This mysterious mirror of the sun goddess Amaterasu is preserved for us in the entire mystery of psychic phenomena. So we have to pause here for a moment and give this thought a little consideration. Suppose we say that this mysterious, magnetic, luminous sphere that surrounds man is this magic mirror. That in this magic mirror, man has a strange, unreal, but apparent sovereignty. That this magic mirror is something like the confused legendary of a Midsummer Night's Dream. Here in this magic mirror is a world that has no reality at all, but it is anything we want it to be, anything we believe it to be. This magic mirror, this astral light, was so-called the blind alley of the ancient mystics. It was this problem of constant danger of self-delusion. It was a condition in which the mysterious power of mind and emotion to create pictures, patterns, designs, this power, somewhat like the strange fantasies of sleep, by which the psychic pressures of our natures can fill our sleeping experience with dreams and nightmares and strange, vague incidents. This magic mirror within man was not only a problem of visualization, of seeing things. It was a problem of convictions about things. And the simplest explanation that we have of it is that it enables any individual to believe what he wants to believe, experience what he demands to experience, see what he expects to see, and hear that which he intends to hear. This mysterious energy of illusion, having no substance in itself, fashions all things into the likeness of our hopes and our fears and our beliefs. If we are fearful enough, this mirror suddenly clouds with demoniacal forms, and we can see in this mirror the whole miserable form of hell. If we want to, we can see in this mirror the reflection of ourselves, any self we wish to see reflected there. The egotist sees all the vain glory of his own estimation of himself. The wretched see their own wretchedness. The ambitious see the full fruitage of their ambitions. Those who believe in life see life. Those who believe in death see death. Those who believe in anything of any kind can, from the subtle substances of their own imaginings, form justifications for their beliefs. Now, the social implication of this is especially interesting today, for never before, probably in our history, have more people been seeing, sensing, believing, or affirming a wider variety of experiences. You hardly meet anyone today who has not dramatic opinions on almost every issue that exists. He never speaks as having opinions. He always speaks of certainties. Everything that we believe is terribly real. And our beliefs are not only fantastically intense, but they shift and change with every passing policy of time. We can be as dogmatic about one subject one day as we were on an entirely different subject a preceding day. We, however, are always sure, we always seem to have the tremendous support of our total nature behind every attitude that we hold, regardless of how absurd or unreasonable it may be. All this terrible attitudinarianism, this tremendous pressure of the irresistibility of our own impulse arises in vibration. And it arises from this mysterious power of energy within ourselves to take upon its own qualities the absolute appearances that we demand of it. This energy is chameleon-like in changing its color constantly. It is Proteus-like in presenting 1,000 faces. Whatever we demand, expect, require, it is there. And for the person himself, it seems completely valid, absolutely certain, undeniably real. As this situation goes along, we know that it produces all over the world an infinite conflict. Children cannot agree with their parents anymore. Parents cannot agree between themselves. Nations have no common ground. Every law that is passed offends some and is applauded by others. There is no common agreement as to virtue, integrity, beauty, truth, or wisdom. Each individual or group, sustained by its own strange archetypal intensity, demands that the universe take on the likeness of its own purpose. And in the magic mirror of things, the universe seems to do so. We look into the depths of this mirror, and we see God or no God, according to our own attitude. We see the likeness of deity as personal, principle, or energy or power, exactly what we demand to see there. This mirror is nothing but our own attitude reflected back, but it seems to present to us a tremendous cosmic reality. Now, this mirror, this strange magic mirror, is always clouded by the shapes and appearances of undisciplined intensities. This is why the ancients warned man long ago that each individual had to develop a center of integrity. He had to develop a basic philosophy of life, a pattern of realities that could not be shaken by opinion. He had to have some real and great conviction, a conviction arising in some truth superior to his own thinking. It is only when he was able to discipline his own mind and emotion that he could prevent the shadows from gathering on the magic mirror. The disciplined person will not demand the impossible. Therefore, he will not see the impossible reflected back upon him as a possibility. He will not expect the unreasonable. He will not populate space with false forms or life with false values. And because his own core is not deceived, he will never deceive himself. Self-deceit arises from lack of self-discipline. The individual who has no foundation in values can move from one attitude to another without even the sense of inconsistency. He can live in a strange dream world, and every different dream is a reality. Having no core, having no reality in himself, he is unable to escape the pressure of the common illusion. That is why most ancient mystics, most ancient religious and philosophic groups required of their disciples these periods of purification, this gradual sublimation of intensity. The ancient Oriental mystics taught the individual that while selfishness existed within himself, self-delusion was inevitable. While hate or jealousy or grievances were in himself, truth simply could not exist in him. But no matter how much he learned, he would still deceive himself. No matter how beautiful the doctrines were that he studied, he would gradually corrupt them to meet his own personal prejudices. Or else he would try desperately to be two people. He would try to nurse his prejudices on the one hand and cling to his principles on the other. Out of this would come greater confusion and usually physical or emotional sickness. So in this mysterious vibratory pattern in which we live, the vibrations of our attitudes paint pictures. They create all kinds of appearances and likenesses. They can lift us up in one instant to heaven and drop us in the next to perdition. And yet actually we have not moved at all. We have only actually changed the focal point of this energy vibration pattern. If we are thus able to constantly pour vibration into this reservoir, it becomes finally certain that it returns to us again as energy problem. We had noted years ago the very close relationships that exist in history and in natural history between outbursts of human destructiveness and natural cataclysms. We observe with considerable interest that apparently the planet itself can become psychically toxic. We are not sure that we understand the meaning of natural disaster. We always assume in some way that this is the final evidence of dishonesty in nature. That no matter how good we are, no matter how careful we are, who can prevent the tornado? Who can stop the tidal wave? Or who can claim any moral relationships between a community and an earthquake? It seems here that we must accept the doctrine of accidents. Yet if we wish to assume for a moment what is quite reasonable, namely that this earth and all of its parts and members may also be regarded as an entity. This earth is a rate of vibration, and from some other planet we could study its spectrum just as surely as we study the spectrums of Jupiter or Uranus or Neptune. We could thereby learn the energy that it reflects and also discover something of the energy that is inherent in it. We know that planets are sustained by the sun just as we are. But just as surely as we condition this solar energy to our own peculiar usages, so do planets. A planet as we know it today has a vast energy field of its own. The physical atmosphere corresponds to this physical energy field. And we are now considerably perturbed by this pollution of the physical atmosphere of our planet. This pollution is not so different from the pollution of the physical body of an individual. If we pour enough chemicals, enough rubbish, enough material that cannot be absorbed into the body, we will pollute it and destroy it. And if we keep on our present way, we may sometime discover that our personal habits, particularly in various forms of therapy and nutrition, may be a greater danger to us and to our survival than nuclear fission. Actually, the earth itself begins to reveal the tremendous contaminating influence of man's own uncontrolled and unrealistic misuse of natural resources. We begin to see that our streams are polluted. The air is polluted. Gradually, the tremendous increase in population must dump its refuse into the sea or into the air or into the earth. Little by little, the physical resources of the planet are damaged. And lesser divisions, such as continents or certain areas of land, may be particularly or more immediately affected, just as we can impoverish soil by poor agricultural methods, or corrupt it by the wrong processes of fertilization. So we can destroy the productivity of a planet, of an earth, of a solar system, so far as that is concerned. On this planet, there are over 3 billion human beings whose minds and attitudes are constantly pouring thought and emotion into the vibratory magnetic field of the planet. Most of the vibration that is going into this magnetic field is about as valuable as smog. The best we can say about it is that it isn't quite as bad as it could be, but is getting worse rapidly. Into this mysterious reservoir of magnetic energy, which must also purify itself, in the same way that the water and the air and the earth must purify themselves. Into this energy field goes the tremendous, continual, toxic force of human negation. A world torn and confused, a world selfish and self-centered, a world warlike and dissipated, a world in which, whether we realize it or not, great units of humanity are united in common negations. Now, we may say that there are thousands of ways of being selfish, but most people practice at least a few of these ways, and the result is that a vast negative selfishness flows out into space as a rate of vibration. Various conspiracies, the fanaticisms of peoples, the endless dissatisfactions of masses, the persecuted and the downtrodden, all these peoples simply fill space with negative energies. And these negative energies have to be in some way cleansed in order that the great nutritional field of nature be preserved. If there is too much of this, we have the same thing exactly that we have in the physical condition of mankind. If the oceans and the air and the earth cannot purify the waste that is communicated to it or dumped into it, then parts of this waste come back again in the various materials that are used for the continual survival of life. The water is a little contaminated. The air is a little contaminated. And we have to drink that water and breathe that air, and we become a little more contaminated. Then parts of this waste come back again in the various materials that are used for the continual survival of life. The water is a little contaminated. The air is a little contaminated. And we have to drink that water and breathe that air, and we become a little more contaminated. The same thing is true of our psychic natures. If the psychic field of our planet is corrupted, if the vibratory energies are polluted, then the human being who has to depend upon these energies for his own survival is receiving into himself vibratory energies that are not pure. Out of Plato's concept of the periodic eras of sterility and fertility in nature, and perhaps is the vibratory answer to the East Indian concept of the Kala Yuga. Here we have a situation in which we breathe in death, that we take in upon ourselves the final summation of the endless streams of energy that are flowing into this great final reservoir of the earth's vital supply. If this is not kept clean, if this is not purified, if human beings do not change their own ways, they will ultimately find that this is another form of selfishness, just as suicidal as refusing to curb industries, the fumes and smog and smoke of which may endanger physical life. Nature apparently finally comes to these impasses in which forms, energy forms, vital forms, etheric forms, what we might almost call demon forms, fashioned out of the very archetypal vibratory cores that we create, become like fixations or complexes within our own natures. And these archetypal negation energy patterns can, in time, produce physical phenomena. Just as surely as, for example, a gradual accumulation of mental and emotional stress within the individual may end in a stroke or a coronary, so in the earth, this gradual building up of psychic tension, psychic stress, may end in the equivalent of this ailment in the body, perhaps an earthquake, perhaps a great electric storm, or if the corrupting influences of this psychic situation become too great, a world epidemic, a vast plague, a pestilence, or something of that nature. We are beginning to suspect a long-range program in sickness. We are beginning to realize that diseases gradually die out as world conditions improve. We are quite convinced, therefore, that while we are taking a great deal of credit for discovering remedies for ailments, that it is not so much the discovery of a remedy for an ailment as it is the correction of a basic weakness in society that finally combats epidemical disease. We know, for example, that in the last 100 years, certain diseases have been reduced markedly. The last 5 years, we have treated them with specific materials, either by inoculation or something of this nature. And we feel very proud of the fact that we have only a fraction as much of this sickness now as we had 100 years ago. But let us be thoughtful and realize that the disease had 90% corrected itself before the first inoculation was given. We'll say that in 1860 there were 1,000 cases of a certain ailment. In 1960 there were only 20. We take great credit for this. In 1950 the first inoculations were given for this ailment. But in 1940 it had already been reduced to a fragment of its previous rate. So the progress was not made in the last 10 years, but over a gradually improving condition of nutrition, hygiene, levels of human life, strengthening of natural defenses. And it is only at the terminal stage that the most spectacular remedies have been applied. It is the same thing in our psychic life. These problems always solve themselves through the gradual correcting of causes. We realize, for example, the terrible influenza epidemic that followed World War I and destroyed more than the war. This undoubtedly was related to a tremendous situation in nature. Statistics have been gathered which would indicate clearly that nearly all of the world's great natural disasters have followed within 5 years of a great human disaster, have followed after wars, persecutions, intolerances, and corruptions of mankind. So it is quite possible that there is a relationship between so-called natural disaster and the conduct of man, and that this relationship is a valid one, and is another indication of the fact that we cannot live badly and do well. It's just not possible in this universe of which we are a part. In the same general way of approaching this problem, we realize that human beings have either mystically or otherwise have sensed this situation, at least to a degree. For into the moral atmosphere of our world has also ascended from the dawn of time the prayers of simple, gentle, contrite, devout persons. Man has sensed some way the cleansing power of prayer, of meditation, of thought, of uniting with others of his kind in thought of peace, or of health, or security, or common good. We have sensed always that where many are gathered together in a common thought, this thought has power. It has been used from the beginning of history in the healing of the sick and in other spiritual mysteries. The mystery of ordination, the mystery of consecration, and of confirmation are all mysteries